That's right. See if I can okay, I guess it's lost.
It's 10 o'clock, but we're missing people.
They must be practicing their pitches somewhere.
Yes, practicing, that's it. Well, hopefully won't hurt us too much. So for those of you who are here, I'll tell you what's going to happen. We have, I don't want to wait too long for people to get here because we do have 16 pitches to get through. So that works out to probably about 4 minutes each with a little bit of time for changeover between people, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to put everything together into one giant presentation file ahead of time so we don't have to include time swapping cables and stuff in that. And so each of you are going to get 3 minutes to do your pitch. So at 2 minutes, I'm going to be sitting right here. 2 minutes, I'm going to just hold up a finger. At about 30 seconds, I'm going to hold up a couple of fingers. And when it gets to be 3 minutes in, I'm going to interrupt you so that we can still have time for about a minute of questions at the end. Because I want to make sure that for each of these we have time for me and for any of you to ask questions about the pitch or the game. Where's my I put them all into the presentation in a random order so that we don't get all the theater ones and then all the Civil War ones are kind of mixed up, and so we don't get all the programmers and then all the artists are the other way around. They're kind of mixed up. Unfortunately, I know that the first person on the first presentation is Adam, who isn't here yet. So, oh, look at that! Perfect. You're going to be up first. Little did you know it. So when you see your name come up, you'll just come up and give your presentation. And you should just be able to use the computer up there for switching them. And so Adams is first. So I'll tell you when there's like a minute left and when there's 30 seconds left. That's the key information you missed. So why don't you go ahead?
All right, so today I'm presenting a game for Signature Theater. It's a tycoon-style game where the player manages their own theater company. And the primary aim of the game is to increase attendance at the Signature Theater and awareness of the theater. This is a mobile game, so it's marketed at smartphone users, which is most of the population today. It has to appeal to current theater goers, so it needs to be somewhat realistic and keep them interested and make them want to come back to the theater. And it has to appeal to new customers, so it has to be accessible to people who don't know anything about theater. The player manages their own theater company and expands it by making wise purchases and management decisions. And the thing that makes this game unique is that actually attending shows at the Signature Theater gives the user exclusive in-game perks. which provides a really good incentive to actually go and see a show. It's going to have a 2.5D isometric perspective, and it's going to be developed for Android and iOS because those are the major mobile platforms. And because it is a mobile game, there are performance concerns. Memory is an issue. There's a limited amount of memory to work with on a smartphone, and battery life can be an issue, especially if the game is sending data over a network. And here's a mock-up of what I see the game looking like. Obviously, this would look like a theater in the actual game, not a house. But I chose this image because it reflects the artistic style that I'd like to go for in this game. And there will be a menu bar at the top, and then statistics located in one or more of the 4 corners.
Well, you definitely came in under 3 minutes, so we've got plenty of time for some questions. I'm going to start with one. So what kinds of tie-ins with the theater were you thinking that there would be?
Well, for example, if you go see a show, maybe then you can put on that show in your game, and it would be much more beneficial to your score and more lucrative than the just vanilla shows you would get if you just never attended. Yeah.
Your idea sounds a lot like the prompt. What's gonna set this out like really different? Why should I care?
Well, the aim of this game is to get people who don't know anything about theater into theater. So I'm hoping it can have a really wide appeal.
Any specifics?
Well, it's going to be accessible in that experienced theater goers will be able to identify with it, as well as people who don't know a thing about theater. So it's going to have a wide scope, wide appeal.
Well, that's about all the time we have for questions. So you want to advance to the next slide so we can see who's next? All right, is Brandon here?
Yeah.
Great. Yep.
So the game I have in mind is called Theatrical Symphony. It's a music rhythm game in the likes of like Fantasia or like Elite Beat Agents, where you hit musical notes on the screen to make the play progressive again. Key demographics: targeted audiences that kind of like music rhythm games. There used to be some appeal for this like a couple years back, but a lot of that's died down. But I think that kind of stuff can kind of get popular again. Could also be targeted at audiences that kind of like the musical styles of like plays and rhythms. There's like nice melodies and stuff and catchy tunes. And being able to recreate that and play that on the go, I would feel is appealing to a lot of consumers. So the mechanics, you'll have buttons that come on the screen. I'd like circles, so you either like tap it and beat with the music of the play. Sliding mechanics too for like long notes and various things, just kind of in that along the line of thinking. Performing well will make it so that the play just like plays out, but it looks nice and everything. If you start failing on it, the play will start to like go bad or like notes will start to go awry. And the incentive that you do well is that you'll get money towards the theater that you can use to like buy upgrades or something that can help you more on the stage later on, like either better score multipliers or just to make it easier on timing on the hitting of notes. So, again, trying to talk about the action. The only complicated thing I think is the programming. I'm not too sure what is involved with it. Art assets. I'm not aware of what the theater would look like. I would need to like see what that would look like because I want to base it on the theater itself. Music has to play a strong influence too, And from a mobile standpoint, it should be an easy pick up and go game. Like stages should be just like you should be able to just pop a song on and just be able to go and stuff. And when you're done with that, just put it back down. Be able to zoom whenever you would want to. And then a super rough draft of what it would look like. So I'm thinking like a cutesy art style, simple character design. Since you're looking at a small screen, things need to be look human-like, but like not super realistic. Like simple details. The circle things like show like a button, like the left one is one that just got hit. Circles closing in on is indicates like when you would have to tap the next one. That's about it.
All right. So once again, we'll do questions. What would the, since part of the point of this would be to of this game would be to tie in to the theater to get people to go or get people to go back again. What sorts of tie-ins might there be with the physical?
I figured that for likenesses' sake, like the actual places that you're taking place that could be based on the theater, like even the namesake of the theater could be involved to like make it recognizable. Like people realize like, oh, this is actually a real place, and that the songs we're using are like actual plays and stuff they either have done or like plan to do. So it can be like preview the things that they've done.
Other questions?
Yeah, so a huge part of the game is going to rely on the music. Where are you thinking of drawing the music from? Like, are you going to take it from, like, shows? Or, because I'm not sure, like, if copyright will be an issue, or, like, what you can really draw from.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I thought there'd be some leniency about being able to pick music that they are able to provide. Because the songs I had in mind were just going to be things based on plays they have done themselves.
Right.
We probably will have to ask them what could happen there, whether that would be possible or not. All right, so that's about all the time we have for questions for that one. So let's see who's next.
Alright, I'm JR. I'm doing a game on the Pat Street Riot. So I'm playing my game in 2 days to Camden in reference to how long it took the troops to come down from Massachusetts down to Baltimore. And my vision is a 2.5D platform where you're reliving the game through multiple viewpoints. I actually was a history major at College Park before I came back for a second degree. And what really brought history alive for me was following the stories of different people as they're reliving the major historical events. So I'm hoping that will help people be inspired to learn more about the actual events themselves. So the target audience is just gamers in history who's interested in an alternative history lesson. Some of the similar games in the genre, just Mark and Ninja, Braid, and Rayman Legend, they've all done well recently in the platformer space, proving that there's still a market for that. And some of the history games I thought were successful were Assassin's Creed and Total War, both of which were sort of exemplifying the approach of tangential learning in that the history they're presenting may not be 100% accurate, but they didn't inspire the player who's had fun with that game to go learn more about the events that that game took place in. And that YouTube link, if anyone can reference it later, is just an extra credits episode talking about tangential learning at length. So the actual game mechanic itself is planning on following 3 different historical figures. I haven't really narrowed down which one yet because I figured we would consult with the grad students. I'm going to track down different correspondence hidden throughout the levels, use stealth to navigate around the Baltimore police or other guards trying to hamper your investigation. And then I was planning on having a narrator read off the documents to you because I find a lot of time gamers are willing to listen to someone tell you the text, but if they have to read, it just gets being a distraction. Most people don't end up doing it. So in terms of technical defense, plan on targeting the PC using the Unreal Engine. You know, at least one artist to get in sort of the prototype art, nothing too fancy, then programming to handle some basic things like UI, collision. Definitely want to get in some AI routines to handle the guards moving around the level, event handling, like if you actually pick up some of the narrative pieces, and then some of the narrative logic following the characters and how they sort of retell the stories they go through. And then a little bit of design in terms of what characters we're doing, where we're going to hide some of the narrative and the actual level design itself. And in terms of art, I picked 3 different pictures. One, since I want to go for a painterly style, I picked an older game on the right, which has held up well, just because I wasn't sure if the client would be interested in doing a realistic style, but that doesn't hold up well with a small team. That game's 20 years old, still holds up pretty well. The middle is a painting from the actual ride itself. I was using that more as an inspiration. And on the left is my not very good programmer art showing a platformer with Mega Man characters. So I'm going to go to the questions from there.
Okay, so how many levels do you think would be sort of feasible to put together if your game were picked for the whole semester?
I would think at least one level for each character, but that would really depend on each character's narrative. But 3 at minimum, and then if we have time to expand on that, either the size of each level or an additional level if that character visits a different place.
What do you think would be the most important thing to actually prototype to tell whether this is going to work or not?
I think it would have to prototype someone who was actually involved in the city in the 2 days beforehand, so that it would be most telling as to which troops and which factions were in place where and when.
Anyone else?
Sure.
You said you studied history. That's really awesome. I think that you'd be a really valuable asset to whatever game sends up game. But you said something that concerned me in addition to you saying you studied history, which is you wanted to do like narratives following like the stories and stuff. I would go pretty light on the people talking to you because in terms of games, there's nothing worse than having it be just a book.
Sure, and that's what I was trying to avoid with having more smaller snippets. It doesn't need to be the full-on like textbook page being read to you. Something more poignant and short.
I look at Amnesia for a point of reference because there's some pretty good narration with that, like balance of it, and gives focus on the player playing.
Right, absolutely.
All right. Let's, you want to advance it so we can see who's next?
Okay, so I'm also doing the Civil War history. My title is Kleptocats, which is a working title. It sounds ridiculous right now, but so you get the idea. Foreseeing a dangerous riot, pilfer weapons from the soldiers to minimize casualties as a cat. Now, my idea for this game is essentially, instead of playing as one of the soldiers or the rioters or like a bystander or something, we play as a cat because I think it'd be a creative way to get the story across, to be able to see what's going on both sides. People will like it. Using feline stealth, stalking fellow animals, climbing, it appeals to kids. And an inspiration of this game for me was Twilight Princess. For those of you who played that, you play like about half of the game as a wolf, actually. I think the mechanics are done really well. Older audiences will like it because it'll remind them of stuff like that, replay as an animal. You'll have abilities like climbing and stealth. Yeah, core. Yeah, can it? Basically, the whole game you're stealing weapons from both sides because you see that this riot's dangerous and you know that you have to stop it, or the riot, and then there's the guys coming in from the train trying to get to the other train or whatever. So you have to steal the weapons from both sides and throw them into the harbor and avoid getting caught. So basically, you're going to be like climbing and using stealth. It's primarily going to be stealth based. You also might have like other cat senses and stuff. Technical things, prefer to use Unreal Engine. For those of you who don't know, Unreal is far more advanced in terms of graphics than Unity. I think that would be very beneficial for this sort of a game. You can do a much more realistic style, and it'll look just overall better. This is going to need a lot of animations and detailed environments with accurate architecture. And in addition to myself, we're probably going to need around 2 to 3 3D artists and 2 to 3 programmers. In terms of Unreal graphics that I mentioned earlier, I know a little bit about shaders and stuff, so I'm definitely willing to work with the programmers if they're doing Unreal. For the art style, I have on the left some images from Twilight Princess. The top image is just the wolf kind of like getting caught by some of the other characters. The bottom is talking to animals and stuff. I think if you're able to talk to animals and get information and stuff, that'd be really useful. And on the right is artwork from Assassin's Creed, and the far right is concept art and stuff. I'm very interested in doing like historically accurate, very realistic artwork for this game.
Okay. So what do you think? I'll repeat because I think it was a good question. What do you think is the most important thing to try and prototype for this game to tell whether it's gonna work and be doable?
Definitely mechanics. Art assets do not need to be finalized in the slightest. I think that's going to be fun for me to do, but I think that the most important thing is getting the game to actually feel fun and for people to people enjoy playing.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one. So the mechanics all make sense to me, but one of the focuses of the history thing was to actually incorporate the history. And other than the setting, I'm not sure how that plays in.
Oh, well, in addition to, like, I may have forgotten to mention this. In addition to, like, collecting the weapons and stuff, with the stealth and everything, you can, like, sneak into, like, buildings and overhear conversations and, like, you know, see, like, maps and stuff. The stealth aspect of it can be exploited in a lot of different ways to really show the history through playing, as opposed to just lecturing. Any other questions?
All right. And it's probably about time anyway, so you want to... Sure.
Okay, so as you can see, I'm also doing the history stuff. Am I loud enough?
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Alright, so The Ride of 1861, made by me, of course, is predominantly a 3D FPS where you are going through the streets of Civil War era Baltimore during the Pratt Street Riot. Along with 3D mobs, you will also play a series of 2D mini games that are based off of events of the riot itself. Oh god. The game is intended to be played by young adults who have an interest in Civil War era Baltimore. The game is somewhat similar to WarioWare or Mario Party due to its inclusion of minigames. In this case, the minigames will be all 2D, but will be surrounded by 3D gameplay that's reminiscent of a simplified Call of Duty. After a brief introduction, you will be placed on 3D streets of Pratt during Civil War era Baltimore, and it's going to look like the time period, of course. To move, the player will be prompted to press a series of keyboard keys which move them forward a step at a time. If you idle for too long, a mob will form and you will have to shoot them to continue. While they're standing there, they will throw things at you and take away your health. You will obviously have a gun and a health bar. Even if you don't idle, they can still throw things at you from the side of the street, and you may act accordingly. There will be a counter to count how many people you kill. At random intervals, well, not random, just at certain intervals, you will be dropped into one of 3 2D minigames that, like I said, are based on events of the riot itself. The first one is kind of like Space Invaders, where you're a woman with a shoe who's trying to fight off soldiers as they come towards you. The second one is similar to Duck Hunt, but you have to repeatedly click on an anchor to get it off of the train tracks before the next train comes, while shooting at mob members who try to stop you. And the last one is a mad dash to the train, where you have to decide whether you're going to actually miss the train or drop some of your supplies. That's up to you. But depending on how you do in all of the scenarios, you have the possibility of getting different endings. The skills and things that we basically need are AI, Unity, 3D modeling and animation, and 2D drawing and animation. The prototype would be pretty simple, where it's basically just the basics of moving and shooting, and then maybe a mock-up version of one of the mini-games. And for the finished game, I was thinking of having 2 teams. The largest team will be 3D, and then the smaller team will be 2D, where it's probably just going to be one programmer, one artist, something like that. Or they will make the mini-games during each of the 2-week rush periods. And these are my screenshots. The one on the left has most of the stuff on it. Hopefully it looks more realistic, because I did this really quickly. But I have examples of the clothing that they wore in the buildings.
So what would be the thing that you would want to have prototyped in the prototype period to tell if this game's going to work or not?
I was thinking just basically the whole pressing the buttons to move thing and being able to shoot.
I would probably choose a thing. So like a mini game, not like the shooting and a mini game.
Okay.
That would be, I think, too much for a prototype period.
It's probably going to be the 3D then. Because
Any other questions?
Is the keyboard presses gonna be like skill based, kind of like co-op, or is it just gonna be like a typing game type thing?
It's just basically at an interval it will come up and you have to keep pressing it to move. And like I said, if you like miss it or you idle it too long, you start gathering.
All right, let's go on to the next one.
Hello. I chose Pratt Street Riot for the game that I would like to be creating. I just wanted to go with the name Pratt Street Riot. I know it's not too creative, but it's supposed to be historical, and I think it's a good way to advertise what it is. So basically, I want a top-down shooter in a 2D isometric view that lets players experience both sides of what happened in the Pratt Street Riot of 1861. And depending on what side of the war that you choose, it's a 2D run and gun or tower defense. I know those are two different genres, but they really wouldn't be too different. I can get more to that in a second. I was thinking maybe it'd be good as like a browser game or something, not too complicated, but it would take place entirely in Baltimore, and it would take place in waves, and each block of Pratt Street would be a different wave. Basically, this would just be marketed towards students and other people who really like history, because we'd be also trying to advertise like the what actually happened in between waves and everything. There would be little story portions that wouldn't be too long. It would just be letting you know what happened through dialogue. Similar titles that have worked as a running gun are games like Metal Slug, where you're trying to get through a whole bunch of enemies you're shooting along the way. This wouldn't have a scrolling screen like Metal Slug, but you're trying to get to the end. It's the same thing. And then in tower defense, you're stationary at the end, but you're trying to stop the infantry from getting past you. The appeal would basically just be trying to understand what happened in 1861. Depending on who you're playing as, it's a different type of playing. But, yeah, the running gun would be the volunteer militia. You're trying to get past the Baltimoreans, and when you're playing as the Baltimoreans, you're trying to stop the militia from getting past you. And for both sides, you could use the same artwork and mechanics pretty much. All of the characters are assigned a certain amount of HP and what damage they do based on what weapons they have. You'll be choosing which characters you want on your side.
So that's 3 minutes. So if there's like one sentence you really think we need to know before we start asking questions, go ahead and tell us.
I just want to show my artwork. It's just grid based, and there's black and white style, like
Okay. So, so how would so I understand how the tower defense and the sort of run and gun work together and kind of work with the theme. What other history elements do you think you could work in with that style of game?
I was thinking also we could do research on the types of weapons that were used back then. You could outfit your militia with what weapons they would have had back then. Same with the townspeople. They might not have, great guns or anything, but there'd be more of them as it's their town.
Other questions? All right, let's see who's next.
So for mine, I chose to do the Class Street Riot thing. It's gonna be like a 2D RPG style game where you play as a time traveler who went to the past in order to like fix the timeline because they got messed up for some reason, and you're trying to set everything back in place the way it was. This allows the people to explore the events leading up to the Class Street Riot, the riot itself, and then the aftermath. So the demographics are for anyone who's interested in history games or history in general. Anyone who likes RPGs. It will be playable on, I think most likely would be console or PC, and probably not the smartphone, I think, anymore, but mostly the console and PC. But it allows the player to move around as a character around the city of Baltimore, and they'll be able to interact with other like NPC characters and stuff. Games that have succeeded are like Chrono Trigger and Dragon Quest. They're like the late 80s, early 90s RPG style game. So the mechanics will be a 2D game where players will interact with the events that lead up to the events of the Baltimore Press Street riots. They will progress through the storyline, interacting with the NPC, learning about the history and everything that happened. They will be able to interact with both sides of the faction, so the people who are with the anti-war Democrats and also the Confederate sympathizers, as well as all the other normal citizens around that time. The player can talk, walk, run, sneak, steal, hide, fight, or dance in the game. And there are different mini games throughout the game. Technical is probably you need the information for the story, like the history-based part of it. Time to create the story, time to create concept art, levels, characters, items, props, time to do scripting and coding, and an engine to run the 2D game. And the screen markup will probably be something, a 2D based thing where you just walk back and forth, left and right, and you can walk up and down to interact with different NPCs with chat bubbles above. On the bottom, it will have a text-based thing where the chat from the NPCs or when you interact with them, and also the other like inventory options or whatever. And then on the side, you have your health bar, which is like in the circle that fills up when it goes up and down. It tells you how much health it is, and then the character could also change emotions depending on the situation.
So, seems pretty ambitious. What would you cut if this is way too big?
Yeah. I'll probably. So instead of maybe having so many like levels throughout the game, instead of making it so big, maybe cut it to just like slightly before the Crash Street Riot itself, and then just the Crash Street Riot That way you have still information between the like the story and everything.
For the most part, in my experience, 2D RPGs at this angle specifically are pretty uncomfortable to play. Do you consider making it like a top-down, like Pokemon games, or like a 3D game, or a side scroller or something? I think those options might be more successful.
Maybe more like 2.5D then, I guess, where it's like it's that 3 point, like the perspective view that's like 3-foot angle. Because originally I was thinking where it would just be, as like your character moves from left to right, it can also go up and down to interact with like characters that are further in the background or more close up to the front, foreground and background.
It's the sort of thing I recommend looking at in Mario.
Yeah.
If I also can try to get, we also want to look at To the Moon, which also is inspired by the SNES era, and it's a top-down RPG that does the time traveling thing, playable within 4 hours, so the skip's a lot more manageable than Chrono Trigger or Dragon Quest.
All right, let's see who's next. I think I didn't shuffle very well. We've got a lot of Civil Wars in the middle.
It's open to interpretation, so I imagine a lot of people gravitate towards it. So my name is Ben Walsh. I also did the Civil War history. I chose to make a game called Civil Journalism. It's a graphic adventure, kind of like I Spy and the Wolf Among Us games. You're going around, you're investigating something. So I want to combine historical accuracy with the things that make these games so successful, in hopes of creating a successful game. So like I said, in the detective style of The Wolf Among Us, you get there after the riot's already happened. You're trying to piece together what went down so you can go back and write a story. And the game should appeal to those who enjoy hunting down clues, talking to people and figuring out what happened, and just being able to put it all together in their head. It gives you a sense of satisfaction when you solve mysteries and puzzles. So, as I said before, you're working for an out-of-town newspaper. I did some research. I found out that the Baltimore Wecker, an in-town newspaper, was ransacked because they did not support the mob. And so, you have to do all the investigating on your own. So you're going to need to question witnesses and see all the damage and the bodies. It's I figure when you're questioning the locals, everyone's got motives and everyone's seen their own thing, so you're gonna have to figure out what happened from their reports, which aren't always 100% accurate. And so I wasn't particularly sure what the game would require on the technical side because I've never really worked on a game, so I figured in the basic stuff, just to get the prototype up, small team, a couple weeks, stuff that we already knew about. I wasn't thinking anything graphically intensive, just point-and-click interface like the I Spy style games. And I was thinking maybe it could go on a tablet, but I wasn't sure what everyone's experience with mobile was, so if we've got time at the end, maybe figure out how to do that. And then I wrote up some mock-ups to see the map. You can investigate all the different places. I just drew a couple X's on there as places you could go. There could be more, could be less, depending on time constraints. And then when you go to one of those places, there's people to talk to or just things to observe. So just a bunch of people there in the attire at the time. Prompt, who should I talk to? And then your little journal thing and the settings so you can exit your game or save it or that sort of thing. And, any questions?
So, well, for one thing, I would not recommend for anyone who's thinking about doing a tablet game expecting to put it in at the end. You either start at the beginning or you don't do it.
All right. I guess once I got to converse with the team and see what everyone's comfortable with, then we'd make that decision.
So what do you think would be the piece of this to prototype during the prototype period to sort of really know if it's going to work or not? What's your biggest risk here?
I'd say just the being able to talk to a few people and then observe that in the journal, like see like conclusions that this character has drawn from what he was talked to. So not a lot of places just for the prototype, just a couple people to talk to, and the journal interface.
Other questions? All right.
Hello, my name is Shode Fleming. I'm doing a game for the Signature Theater. The game is called Signature. Signature is a tycoon-style mobile game where the player uses a game mechanic that I call a musical signature to perform shows at a fictional theater company named a True Sing Theater Company to earn money to rebuild the theater and bring in money. For the demographics, it would be suitable for all ages. Ideally, the simplistic game mechanics would suit casual gamers, while the fact that you can unlock things and develop your theater, increasing difficulty would suit more advanced dedicated gamers. The game style that I'm thinking of is like the Trace Race minigame from Mario Party 4, where the player had to trace over an oncoming line, and depending on how close they were with the line, then that affected their point in their final score. Alright, so a player assumes the role of a character named Ingrid Signature, a newly hired actress working for the theater company. The idea of the musical signature would be that as the music plays from the shows, there's a continuous line that comes across the screen, and a player must trace over it with their finger or pick up their finger, put it down in time with the music. So the closer you are what you're tracing, the better your performance, and money experience is earned off the performances. So money would be used to buy more seats, house more people, better concessions, costumes, anything. Players would use experience to unlock new songs and eventually new shows. And so as the game goes, shows and songs would increase in difficulty and rewards would increase as well. The core of the programming need would revolve around the accuracy of the touch of the player to the line. So once that's settled, then it should, ideally I'm an artist, but it should be relatively easy to transfer that to different musics and different signatures. Secondly, we'll be adding the mechanics of adding and remembering new content as it is unlocked and purchased. Ideally, the art style would be traditional and digital elements merged together, so both traditional and digital artists could work well in the game. I drew a character. This is ideally Ingrid's signature. And then I have two mock-ups of the musical signature portion of the game where either it would be a word, which might be better for later difficulty songs, or shows in time with the music. Any questions?
So I'm gonna go again with the what piece of this would you prototype?
It would definitely be the nailing down the musical signature part of it. So just kind of ignore the character for now. Just make sure that the musical part could work. We just use a sample song to make sure that it's fun, it's playable, it's easy to understand.
How much would the music play into the tracing, and how much would it be just tracing a shape?
It would the jerking of the pattern would be in time with the music. So it would be very dependent on what kind of music is involved in the game. So different songs would have different patterns to trace, but they would all be based off of the music.
Yeah, so sort of with the rhythm.
Yes. So something along the lines of Rhythm Heaven, where the beat is very, very prominent in the pattern.
Any other questions? Okay, see who's next.
Alright guys, my name is Tyler Rasmussen, and I decided to go for the theater option here. It's called Create Play, and it's a choose your own adventure type game, kind of like a choose your own adventure book, but instead it's going to be interactive, kind of like walk back and forth on a stage similar to the background there, and you'll be able to click on different actors to choose different actions, and it'll be a partially interactive environment where maybe there'll be props on the ground or something that you'll be able to interact with and then make decisions about what to do with them. And then at the end, you can have an advertisement promoting the theater, just something like, come and see how close this was to the actual play, or maybe if you attend a play, you can unlock specific actors or specific shows, something like that. And the target audience is theater enthusiasts, choose your own adventure fans, and it will be possible to tailor a whole storyline or different storylines to different age groups. And the game mechanics is played scene by scene. So it starts off, there's just like something on there. You can click on a specific actor and tell them to go do something and then make a decision about that. For example, pick up a bucket of water and then you can throw it on someone or then apologize or get into a fight with them, something like that. So it just kind of goes wherever you want it to, within some boundaries, obviously. Technical defense, the point-and-click mechanics will be pretty easy. The artists and the textures, the scenes will probably be the most difficult part of this, because depending on the complexity, it could require a lot of scenes really quickly, and a lot of different options. But just depending on the time, we can try to scope it out, seeing where it's going to go. And it's going to be kind of like, I've got some examples. Yeah. So, this would be the optimal art style. If we could get all the way here, it's kind of like a 2.5D type thing, that would be great. This is probably a little bit more realistic, hopefully a little bit more realistic than this, but just kind of shows the things, and I just got a couple more pictures here. I cheated a little bit, sorry. Just things like this, and like say you could pick up those flowers in the background, for an example, things like that. And, it would appear to be 3D, you know, hopefully be able to move back and forth a little bit. If not, we could just pretend 3D like this. And just a lot of detail in the scenes would be what would make this interesting. And that's it.
All right. This style of game really, I think, needs a good writer behind it. Are you that? Is that one of your skills?
I don't know. It could be, but I haven't tried it yet. That's definitely true. That would be probably the most difficult part of implementing this, for sure.
Is there any, I know you're choose your own adventure, but is there any goal you're working towards, or is it just click on this and see these little scenes?
Yeah, just kind of fun little, just see what happens type sandbox thing, I guess. Would be kind of cool. Maybe not quite sandbox, but.
You can make it achievement based, so like choosing different paths or into different achievements. Like, oh, I'm gonna play it a bunch of times to see how many I can get. That sort of thing.
That's a great idea.
All right.
Hi, I'm Paul. I also did the Civil War era concept. So my game's called 5 O'Clock Shadow. Basically, in the distant future, modern fashion demands authentic Civil War facial hairstyles. So it's your job to use time travel to go back in time and just steal the beards off of people. Because back in the Civil War, they had crazy beards. Yeah. So who's gonna like it? It's kind of a ridiculous, hilarious concept, so I think it's kind of funny and has some humor for everyone, kids, young adults. It follows very much like a stealth, almost assassination, except instead of killing people and leaving them like dead, you're just taking their beards and running away. So the basic mechanic here is you're targeting soldiers and civilians during the Pratt Street riot, so you're kind of overhearing conversations as you're looking around. and you're using this futuristic tool to literally just like remove the beard from their face. But the cool catch for this game is you can revisit the past as many times as you want, but because of the space-time continuum, you can't. One of your past selves can't see one of your future selves. So you can see all of your past selves every time, every additional time. You can look back and see all your past selves stealing beards because you have a limited time segment before the riot breaks out and it's too dangerous to be there. So you have to. You're sort of like creating the AI as you go. You know, when you're moving through the level, probably don't look around too much because you want to be caught by your earlier selves because they didn't see you. So it's a third-person action game. I mentioned Assassin's Creed. It's all about extracting the beards for maximum profit, leaving them unconscious, and not being seen stealing the beards. It's very heavy in 3D art and programming. Obviously, the AI is very complex. It's a huge challenge, and if you wanted to work on this game, you'd have to be extremely dedicated on both sides, either as an artist or a programmer, because it's going to be very difficult. Just kind of a hilarious mock-up of you just taking a beard away, but it would be a third-person perspective. Yes. Oh, sorry. Should he start with the question?
Well, I'm going to start with the, once again, this is a huge game. If you had to cut something.
Right. So if I bare minimum, I think just stealing the beards. The time travel revisitation thing I thought was like a really interesting thing, but that's like if everyone's like, oh, we've got this, like let's keep going running. But if you could just like walk around, hearing conversations, maybe like the best way to simplify is just have a text box at the bottom that like reads text that people are saying like in the build up to the mob, and then. In this way, it doesn't really change history. Everything's happening. So, and with the revisitation, you can experience the history a lot of times. So you can make the content really stretch. Yes.
All right, I love the idea, and I was right on it until you said 3D game. I feel like because it's so funny, this really lends itself to being an in-your-pocket phone game where you just pull out and it's got like sort of normal-looking characters, but then they steal the beard, like eyes pop out, and I could see this being 2D mobile so much easier than 3D. So what does the 3D add that you can get in 2D?
You've got a great point. It definitely would be maybe a little bit more feasible and really accessible as a phone game. I personally just have a very strong desire to use both Unreal Engine and do crazy 3D art and animations, and that's my strong suit. So I wouldn't have the guns to do a 2D game anyways, which sounds kind of stupid to say. Yes.
If you can keep in the revisitations.
Yes.
What would happen if you stole a beard from somebody that a past self stole a beard from later?
Right.
Would that be the same thing as being
right? So you can't break the continuity. If one of your past selves sees something that you didn't see when you played as them, then it's like game over. It's just like you broke the world. Try again. So ideally, you could go back in time as many times as possible, but before you know it, you're just like staring at the ground all the time because you don't want to see your future selves that you're going to add in later. Or something. I don't know. We'll see. Any other questions?
All right. See you next. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Celeste. I also did the Civil War game. I gave it a dramatic name, but obviously I can change. Civil War versus Bloodshed. It's a strategy game. The idea is that you are actually commanding it was a militia, the group that was trying to get through to the train station and dealing with blockades. And the big thing is, I looked it up in the real thing, they were all commanded to not shoot into a mob, do not attack anybody, not attacking you. So I want there to be a consequence to, you have to actually pay attention, not to shoot everybody. Alright, so the demographic is going to appeal to is history students learning about it, also just people interested in strategy games and, brain stuff. Not a big strategy game person myself, but
similar like Age of Empire, 080. It's just strategy games tend to be popular with a certain demographic. This is going to be different from those in that you're not like building an empire or anything. You're just trying to get through the city, and your troops are the resource. You don't want to lose, obviously, your troops. Okay, so yeah, you can command them. Also, the idea maybe you could also command the police, so you have two different forces. But we can see how that works. The goal is to get as many to the end goal, but if like you're having them attack random civilians, eventually they're going to desert you. Because they had to have some kind of consequence for that. I thought that would be kind of interesting. You're losing your people for attacking too well. There could be different awards for historical accuracy, like you lost exactly 4 people. That's what really happened. Or just for doing well, or for fun things. And I do want to incorporate the real things in the riot. Like, the big attack would probably start, according to looking it up, they attacked from behind, and then it kind of gets crazy. Okay, technical defense. I'm not a technical person. I don't think it's going to be too difficult. It's like 2D or 2.5D, and we can add and subtract different elements. The bare bones would really just be that you're commanding the different troops, and you can attack or defend or march, that sort of deal. Even the consequence isn't necessary, but make it a little difficult. This is my mock-up. I just really kind of want it very stylized. I do want to have it more realistic. It's just a try. And want to try and incorporate the clothing and all from that time, but also want it to kind of look very grungy and old. Got through it really quick, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh yeah, and one thing you can see here is the idea. This person, if you attack them, you're going to get penalized. This person, if you attack them, you're good, because they already attacked you. So you can't just set everybody on, like, Rambo mode. Yeah.
So my first question is, you say you're not a big strategy game person. Have you played any?
Yeah, I mean, I think I played turn-based. I haven't played real-time, which is what this would be, but I can't get ideas. I just thought it would work better as a real-time, because you kind of get that chaotic feel. It's a riot.
Anyone else? All right, let's see who's next.
I'm John. I'm a programmer. I did theater. It's going to be called Theater Life. It's going to be a simulation / tycoon type of game. You manage the theater and hopefully meet expectations for upcoming musicals. And it's going to be aimed more towards older audience for adult late 20s and movie theater goers. The game will pretty much be like split into 2 parts, similar to Lemonade Stand. You prepare for the musical, and then the musical itself happens. Game mechanics. First part. First the player starts with a basic set of props and staff, a bit of money. Not to overwhelm them, we start them with a little. And they can use money and whatnot to unlock more features of the game. Makes it a bit more complex as they go on. It advances in real time, so there's a bit of tension trying to meet requirements and not have the whole thing collapse. Random events can pop up where you have to make a decision quickly, like this staff member got sick, or this is broken, or this prop you ordered hasn't arrived yet. Second phase is more relaxed, where you actually see the results of the musical. You might still be able to control things, but that's like an optional thing that we might not implement. The first part's pretty simple. I made a lot of things kind kind of optional. So at the base, it'd be a lot of menuing. So we need GUI stuff. Event writing would be, well, anyone could probably do it. Like, I think we should add a random event where this happens, that happens. But the thing will have to be coded by the program. As for animations, they're really simple. Like, when you do this, someone might run out the door. Second phase, we have to do data interpretation where what you did in the first part will affect what happens. For the mock-up, the last screen would be what I expect the menus to look like. The second part would be the scenes playing out. I'm pretty sure we won't do MS Paint style, but we're going more towards realistic kind of deal, giving the audience.
So I'm not sure I understand exactly what would happen in the second phase.
Well, depending on what props you have or how much of the staff actually practiced or did whatever, depending on how you went through with the first part, things might fall apart or go smoothly. The audience might like it, might not, and that determines how much money or how many people are willing to come back for the next round.
Okay. Other questions?
I like your question.
All right. Let's see who's next.
So, working name is Siggy. That's the name of the little ghost you play as it's a maze game, the most famous of which would be, I guess, Pac-Man, which is nice because it's easy to reskin. Once you get the basic mechanics done, you can reskin it for any single production that's being put on. It would be aimed towards mobile phone users and theater goers. A couple differences: you can't see the whole maze at once, and I'd like some faster enemies to come in depending on what was stolen. Because as the haunted theater, you steal props pertaining to whatever play is being put on at that time. But it would be, because it's a mobile game, very cutesy, easy to read graphics, more flat animation. I just went over this, but as you collect more and more props and tickets, you get crew chasing you, and then cast, and then like the director, and those all go at varying levels of speed to be able to catch you. And if you get caught, you lose everything, and you can get prizes for longest survived and most stolen props. You can also hopefully compare with your friends to be like, oh, I made it 2 seconds longer than you did, and something like that. I'm not too sure on the programming part, because I am one of the artists, so it's a 2D game, so I hope that will be a little easier to program. I do like having at least 2 artists, even more, because I feel like people work the best when they can constantly have that critique going on. And if the programmers manage to get one level done, and then artists can go through and reskin to get more games out, I know that that's very helpful. And this is a screen mock-up of the prop room, and it has lots of stuff that you would later see in maybe the theater room, which would be a different level, or there could be a different level where it would be in the, I don't know, the mezzanine, or where the chairs are, and stuff like that, so it would be easy to reskin.
So have you thought about how this would tie into to getting people into the theater?
I would like it so that if you could either buy a new the new skin for whatever play was being put on, or if you went to see it, you could scan your ticket, and then you would get the new skin for free, so that you could then play whatever's being put on right then.
Other questions? All right, let's see who's next.
I'm Matt Reaping. I also decided to do the Pratt Street Riot. Young adults they're too stressed to learn history through boring textbooks and documentaries. But a game like History the Animated Series educates young adults through satire and historic events. So obviously the target audience would be college students, and I thought, why not take something serious and put some humor to it? And that's also, in my experience through people that I know, they remember points of movies or games or anything like that they find funny more often. A similar game could potentially be Kerbal Space Program. I haven't actually played it, but I know that they have a lot of slapstick humor in it. And that would be the MIVS would be a festival that could be showed at. So the way the flow of the game, the player would choose, a viewpoint. They'd either choose to be a soldier or a civilian, and they would be able to, live through a series of missions and also be able to. It's an open world RPG, so they'd be able to interact with key characters and be able to actually converse with them, kind of like they do in Mass Effect. So you can have predetermined toward each key character. And depending on your response, you'll either gain or lose trust of the characters, which will actually either help or hurt your potential of passing the next mission. And there's different. You can have all different sorts of events going on. You could have some kind of fighting. Maybe you're running away, or maybe there's you have to do some kind of problem solving, some kind of puzzle. And so the player goal would be to complete the major events with the least amount of resistance, but of course the game goal for the designers is to help players understand the historical events and viewpoints of the soldiers and civilians. This would be a single player, third person open world RPG, obviously meant to educate. Now there would have to be some kind of, programming wise, you'd have to make some kind of system to actually determine the trust ratios based off your conversations, and then also determine what your consequences will be, so whether the key character helps you out later on, or maybe he becomes against you, so on and so forth. And people and skills that we'll need, it's going to need a fair amount of artists, and it's going to need at least one person who's good at writing and that has a sense of humor, because not only is it going to be a little slapstick, but it's going to be a bit goofy, I guess kind of like Minions and Despicable Me or something like that. And it's going to take a little bit of time considering the number of animations that we need. And that's kind of the goal look and feel that we would get, hopefully, at the end.
So as an open world RPG, this is potentially, I mean, I know you had on the slide you think you could do it in 8 weeks, but it might be kind of big for this. So how would you trim it if you needed to?
Well, you could either make the world really small, potentially, or you could kind of make it where it's more linear path, and I guess you could consider it like kind of like a Call of Duty. You start at one level and you continue through it, going to the next level, going to the next event, and you don't get a veer off left and right, in a sense. Be a way to cut it down.
Anyone else? All right, let's see who's next.
Hello, I am Jeff Hurd, and I chose the theater version mainly because of the board game I like to play called Coliseum. It's not quite the same, but my title, The Show Must Be Played, and it would be a tycoon-style game where you produce musicals from the ground up. my thought is for anyone who likes to build bigger and better entertainment as you progress through the game. As you finish one, you start a new one and you build it bigger and better than before. Roller Coaster Tycoon was probably the biggest inspiration. As you gain more resources, you can build a bigger park. In this case, acquire a music theater and build a bigger music theater. And let's see. The idea here, you produce a show based on your current reputation, available assets. You'd actually go in and try to acquire a show, and you get a list of options based on what you have done before, what you haven't. If you're brand new to it, you're going to have the minimal shows, the smallest shows, the ones that nobody knows, and they're going to get a few lesser rewards, but it'll help you build the bigger and better thing. Next, you acquire sponsors to get that funding that you may need additionally to build the show and make it better than you could have on your own. If you don't have a theater yet, you have to rent a space. There would be one available within the cityscape or townscape. Otherwise, you go to your own, and if you can, you start adding to that. Shows played, you gain reps and assets based on your cast, the crew, and the aesthetics of your stage when your plays perform. It's going to require you to touch and click on various buildings. The idea is that it's going to be played on a smartphone. So as you want to go to, say, go hire cast members, you would press on the building where the cast is at, you would move to that position, and then you would go inside, and there you would see casts that are available. You could, based on funds that you have available to you, pick the ones that you're going to be able to afford. The idea is for the prototype, I was thinking that start with the 2D scene, do it 2D, but 3D would be ideal, along the lines of the way the 3D works for something like the Roller Coaster Tycoon or some of the other ones that I've played that may not be known, like Jurassic Park Builder or something like that, where you have the people moving around and the buildings separated out in a big 3D-like atmosphere. It would require artists for external and internal art, programmers to handle the animation of the various people, as well as the building of the sets and the cast going through their performance or going through their rehearsals while you're building your props. And again, it will be played on a smartphone. That's what the creator wants.
So time's up. So.
And that's one more.
So for the, you mentioned the prototype, but what do you think is the sort of most uncertain piece of this that you would need to prototype?
My thought was either going to the active casting and hire some cast, or possibly building the set for the play itself, or the show, or the musical itself. Going through picking the props and having the various workers constructed, placing them where you want them on the stage to their best effect.
There are other questions? All right, thank you. And I think that's the last one. So, great, thanks to all of you. I am going to share with you as soon as we're done here a little online survey where you can give. So basically, it's going to ask for your input about which of these games, other than yours, if yours is not picked, are you most interested in, and what about that game? What would you want to get out of that game? Would it be something that would give you a chance to do some 2D art if you're really into that, or to do some 3D art if you're really into that, or to do particular type of programming, or it's just a kind of game that you really love?
or you have a skill that seems like that game would really need. So I will send that out momentarily, and along with a link to all of these slides, so you can actually remember what everybody else's games were. I'm going to ask you to give me that feedback tonight, because I'm going to be. I want to have the prototypes picked by the time we hit class on Wednesday. So that means that I got to be picking them tomorrow, and so I'd like to get all of the different sources of input on which prototypes to make. Basically today and early tomorrow. So you'll just submit those to me by tonight. So that's it. Thanks to all of you. And I will see you on Wednesday.